Hello. Before we get started, Heather, I don't think I have your email address, and so if you could send it along, or Marianne, do you have it?
I can drop it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
No, I can't. There's no chat.
There's no chat.
But Marianne, you have it, it looks like. Okay.
Marianne, we can't hear you.
It is just heather.backman@mass.gov, but
Okay, yeah, I have it. I'll send it to Elaine, and
Okay.
that's why when I was saying hello to everybody, nobody was responding. So I'm just okay. Okay.
It's those little things.
Yes, okay. Okay.
This is great. 3,500 rather a month. Where? So, no, around 600, like that, so. Yeah.
Four.
Boy, what a letdown that snow was, huh?
Did anybody have snow?
I think East Long Meadow did, and a lot of the southern part of the state did, and Rhode Island did.
Do you wanna find me a apartment building in South?
Who's
I don't know.
That was the most enjoyable foot of snow that I've had in years.
it was hard shoveling, wasn't it?
It was brutal.
Okay. Um, okay.
Climate change, the snow is clear now.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it? Okay. Okay.
Hello, Brad. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6. Have you heard from Molly
I haven't. I could text her.
and Dale? Oh, there's
Okay.
Dale.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Nope, there she is.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:01. I don't see any public, so I guess we don't have any public comments. Moving right along, review and approve previous meeting minutes. We have January 25th. We haven't approved those, have we? Penny? Sorry. Penny?
Sorry, I'm trying to finish dinner.
Oh, okay.
I know, radical. Correct.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 25th?
I think I have one question. Hold on just a minute, please. My question is to Neil, were you present at that meeting?
January
That's a good question.
I'll tell you, we talked a lot about value engineering and we discussed quite a bit the difference between the roof size that the stormwater design is based on and the building interior is based on. We talked about the life cycle cost analysis and the plumbing
I
code.
I can look up and see if Neil was there. So I can.
Yeah,
It
I kinda
doesn't
remember-
sound familiar, honestly, but
yeah, I remember sending
know
you some
Roger
email
does.
notes afterwards or text or something. So I think that's we talked about
January
the,
25th.
January 25th.
Yes.
Okay. I can look up and see if he was there. Um, 25th.
that was a Thursday night.
Nope, Matt Odens, Brad Foster, Dale Hool, Dominic, Stephen Dalmas, Penny Jakes, Roger Hoyt, Amanda Alex, Elaine Paleo, John Lawless, and me.
Okay.
And if you ever have those questions, Penny, you can ask me and I can just do a report.
I
Okay.
know you were
Okay.
in Costa Rica and I didn't
Okay,
bother you.
okay.
Okay, I have changed that and I did get comments from Stephen, so. And I incorporated those.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move, Brad.
Do I hear a second?
I second Stephen.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Antonellis, I.
Dallas, I.
Foster, I.
Poole, I.
Penny,
Sorry, I'm taking notes. I.
Moss abstain.
Quackenbush,
Abstain, it wasn't there.
and Paleo, aye. All right, those minutes have been approved. And then we have the minutes from our meeting last Wednesday, which was the 7th. No. Was it the 7th?
The 8th, it was last
The 8th, it was
Thursday.
Thursday, sorry,
Eighth.
the
I
8th.
re- I received no comments on those.
There, I didn't see anything on them that I thought needed to be corrected. Do I hear a motion to approve those?
So moved, Dallas.
Do I hear a second? Paleo,
Second.
second.
Okay.
Any changes, comments, or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Antonellis, I.
Dallas, I.
Foster abstain, I wasn't there.
Poole, I.
Jake's I.
Moss abstain.
Quackenbush, aye.
Paleo, aye. Okay. Finish with that. Let's see. Let's review, discuss, and vote on well contractors. That ought to be fun. So did everybody receive all 3 of the bids?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Marion and Neil, do you want to lead this discussion?
I think we'll let Neil lead the discussion
Sure.
and then I can jump in with additional information.
Okay, thank you.
So we got 3 well proposals. They were pretty comparable on scope. There were some minor variations among them. Of the 3 proposals, there were 2 that lined up, I think, quite well and quite competitively. Quabbin Well and Cushing and Sons were literally pennies apart on the final bottom line price. Connecticut Valley Artesian Well was the second well driller. The third well driller. They had the highest priced proposal and did not include well testing services as part of their fee. So I thought if the committee was so engaged and there were no other questions, would like to propose to the committee that we approve a not to exceed amount of $16,000 and afford Mary Ann or myself or both the opportunity to go back and speak with Quabbin and or Cushing's to reconfirm scope.
Wasn't the well testing in Matt Cassane's proposal?
Yes,
There is, Elaine, we had a line item cost from Fuss and O'Neill for, I believe, $49,000 or $45,000 to perform a well test. Both of the well drillers are proposing to perform a pump test for $5,000.
Right.
So I need to figure out, A, what's the other $45,000 that we're paying for with Fuss and O'Neill?
Mhm.
Or B, if we have, what services we need from the well driller if Fuss and O'Neill is doing everything. I'd like to flesh that out a little bit more before we make a recommendation.
Okay. That sounds
But-
reasonable.
So the only real difference in price, other than some minor individual unit pricing, the clarification, at least on paper, it appears as though Quabbin Well has the cheapest proposal based on 40 feet of casing. They on Quabbin's proposal, they carried 60 feet of casing. And the other two drillers, both Connecticut Artesian as well as Cushing and Sons, only had 40. So if I level their proposal to the 40 feet, then their well price comes in a couple of $100 cheaper than Cushing and Sons. So
Mhm.
that was one thing that we wanted to confirm. The second thing we wanted to confirm with Quabbin was that the unit prices that they provided on their proposal would extend to additional drilling, additional casing, additional cement grouting. If any, if we do a much deeper well, is the $18 a foot for the well drilling, does that act as the unit price for additional footage as well? The Cushing and Son proposal was clear that it did not. They gave additional price per foot for well drilling of $21.50 and additional casing per foot at $42. And then they increased the well drilling cost if they went above 600 feet and then again above 900 feet. So just like I said, there's a couple of little nuances that we want to just kind of flesh out. It appears, again, at face value that Quabbin is giving us the best, most advantageous proposal. But I think it just requires a second look, and we want to make sure that we're on board with any additional footage of either well and or casing that may be required to finish the well.
I did speak to Quabbin this evening, and they did confirm that, that those unit prices were, I said, what if it was more than 350 feet and it's the same price? And I said, what if it gets to 700 feet? And he said, it's the same price because, Cushing and Sons had different price breaks the deeper they went. But we would want them to rewrite the estimate and have that in writing.
Mary Ann, I think there was also a question on the size of the casing and the borehole
And
at the
yes, and he
top.
said it
So
was
just
the
like I
same.
said, some
Yeah.
little things that we want to make sure that we
Yes.
confirm.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and then availability. I spoke to him about availability. And they would, once we decided who we're gonna hire, if it's Quabbin, they put us on their schedule and then we coordinate. We've still got to get through the Concom has to issue the order of conditions, and then there's a 10-day appeal period. And then there's a 2-week weather testing that has to be done before the well is drilled. And Fuss and O'Neill will do that. And so, they said that they could drill it in a 2-week window, 3 or 4 weeks from now.
Brad?
And Marianne, somewhere in there, do we get DEP to sign off?
Well, yeah, and so Fuss and O'Neill is beginning conversations with DEP now. DEP doesn't have to sign off before the well is drilled. But after the well is drilled, then Fuss and O'Neill will do a whole bunch of testing. And then DEP will permit the well. And Fuss and O'Neill is doing that permitting. That's part of their scope of services.
Okay, so from what I hear, I am looking for a motion to accept the proposal that Marianne and Neil continue conversations with Cushing and Quabbin. And based on their conversation, that we would give them approval to decide on which bid we will accept. Does that sound reasonable to people? Brad? You're muted.
I got confused in part of the process, something that Neil was saying. It sounded to me like Fuss and O'Neill, that somebody besides the well drillers had also offered to do the testing.
Right.
And I assume that with this motion, we would be giving a cap and leaving the choice of which of those three, or which of the two, the final well driller that is chosen, and Fuss O'Neill. It actually does the labor of the water testing. Is that correct?
So I believe that there is right now some scope overlap between what we're gonna ask the well driller to do, if anything, and what we're expecting to receive from Fuss and O'Neill as part of their well services. So I need to have that conversation with the intended well driller and make sure that you're not buying duplicate services.
Okay, thank you.
So is it premature for us to yield the responsibility to Marianne and Neil for choosing the bid?
I don't think so.
I was going to say the same. We're really discussing the driller. There are questions with Fuss and O'Neill.
Right,
I don't
but
think
those
that impact
questions
the
can be,
bid.
that doesn't really affect the bid because both of them had approximately the same amount for the well testing, which would be probably not all of the well testing that Fuss and O'Neill has said. Obviously, if they're paid, they assessed it at 45 and these are coming in at 4.5. So obviously there's something more that needs to be done by Fuss and O'Neill.
So I think to keep it really simple, I think that the well driller is providing a cost to drop a pump down the freshly drilled well and draw water out of it with a backup generator for 24 hours to facilitate the well test.
Right.
And all I want to do is make sure that if Fuss and O'Neill carried that scope within their proposal as well, we certainly don't need two people doing it. So we back it out, most likely back it out of Fuss and O'Neill's scope, and while he's set up on the well, we'll have them draw the water and let Fuss and O'Neill take the samples and do all the lab work to get it permitted and tested.
That makes the most sense.
What's the minimum requirement gallons per minute on this type of well?
So as I read the proposals, there's a reference in the proposals as well as in the technical information that came from the town that the drawdown test is to be performed at 1 gallon per minute. But as I reread it a second time, I don't think that we've yet identified what we're anticipating for a well yield. I don't believe that there's any storage inside the building.
No.
And I don't believe that one gallon a minute is really what we want. I think we're expecting something higher than that. And I would ask Dominic to weigh in if he has any other information available from the plumbing engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. There's specific numbers I don't have in hand right now, although there has been communication with the plumbing engineer. We don't have storage as well, and my sense is our plumbing engineer is just waiting for that yield to be able to design the pump and potential storage capacity if needed. So I can get that information to you. Again, Fuss and O'Neill has all that, I think, as well, all that information as part of their contract. So that's all the information I have about that. Yeah.
Dale?
Yeah, so, I live around the corner from the library site, and my well sort of meets the specs of what we're talking about. It's around 375 feet, and it's putting out about a gallon a minute. But my two neighbors have under 200-foot wells that put out a lot more than that. They put out 3 or 4 gallons a minute. So, I think our figures are conservative, and they should apply in terms of the finances to put this thing forward. That's all, and we might get lucky.
Stephen?
My understanding is that when you drill a well, when you get to the point where you hit water, you continue to drill some additional depth, and then that, say, overage becomes, say, storage. And even if you had a gallon per minute yield, you actually have a certain amount of storage capacity down in the well. And you can always put in a larger pressure tank in the building to act as storage. And I don't think the library would typically use more than a residence would use, except maybe when you're having a meeting.
Anyone else have any comments? Jeff, do you have any insight?
No, I'm not that knowledgeable in wells other than, Stephen's correct. There is storage in the well. But I do think they drill a lot deeper than just when they hit water. They go down to rock and go into that. But I think we ought to just move ahead and let Mary Ann and Neil work with the guys and okay the 16,000.
Dale?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment about casing. Because the casing varies. Traditionally around here, it's 20 feet of casing will do it. But where I am, I have 60 feet. So, 40, I would think, would be a conservative minimum. And we might require 60.
Yeah, I think that, just to speak to that, I think that we provided the well drillers with the geotechnical information that we had on hand. So they have an education at least as to what other drillers have seen on this lot for overburden until they hit refusal. So I'm hoping we don't go over, or it's in that 40 to 50 foot range anyway.
Okay. Any more discussion? Penny?
No, do you want the 3 bid prices in the notes?
Yes, please.
Could, Neil, summarize those for me?
Yep. So based on 40 feet of casing, and 350 feet overall. Quabbin Wells proposal is $14,690.
14,690, yep.
Cushing and Sons was 15,160.
15, what was it? 15,
15,160.
thank you.
And Connecticut Valley Artesian Well was $13,500, but did not include the well testing services. If we were to level their scope with the others, inclusive of $4,500 for the well test, their well price would be 18,000 even.
Thank you.
And just to note, Connecticut Valley's unit costs for overage were significantly higher than either Quabbin or Cushing.
Right. Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we charge Marianne and Neil with going ahead with requesting more information and more details from Cushing and Quabbin. And that we do not exceed a price of 16,000 for the entire package, including the testing. And that we give them the authority to determine which of the two drillers to go forward with.
I'll second that, Brad.
Any discussion?
I'm gonna, can I make an amendment?
Sure.
Okay, so there's also the question of the additional drilling if we need to go beyond
Yes,
350 feet.
yes.
So, so can we make an amendment to that motion that also authorizes me to, because that's gonna be on the site the day of the drilling.
Right.
So it authorizes me to authorize the additional drilling if we need to go beyond 350 feet the day of. And then, and it just seems like it makes the most sense for me to do it because I'm here working in town and so that would be the one extra piece. Which
Okay.
would mean it would go more, you know, it might be more than $16,000, but it would be the per, you know, that we would know the per unit cost.
So
Okay,
16,000 initial and
Right.
then knowing the unit cost for above,
Right.
beyond 350 feet.
okay.
So then the motion does that need to be stated in the motion that you're adding
Yes,
additional drilling? And can someone provide wording for that?
yes, that we have authorized up to $16,000 as long as drilling goes to
350 feet.
350 feet, and Marianne will be authorized to approve drilling beyond 350 feet at what she has received as a stated amount per foot beyond 350.
Okay, got it.
Do you still second that, Brad?
I do.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Antonellis, aye.
Dale on the side.
Foster, aye.
Cool, aye.
Jake's eye.
Moss, I.
Quackenbush eye.
Puleo, aye. All right, this is exciting.
I have one follow-up question, actually request from Dominic.
Yes,
Dominic, can you just consult with the plumbing engineer? I'm assuming that the way that this is all gonna go about is they're gonna go down to 350 feet, and they're gonna evaluate whether or not they're getting water into the well. And if they are getting water, they'll give us an estimate of what the well is yielding. It could be a very low number, it could be a very high number, right, depending on where we are. So is somebody gonna be available from the plumbing engineer to kind of wave us off and say, that's plenty, we don't need to drill anymore, or it's not enough, we want you to drill another 100 feet? Like, what guidance are we gonna get from the plumber during this process?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I was just writing you an email that we should coordinate the day of the drilling. I have already previously spoken with a plumbing engineer, and they were willing to reach out to the contractor directly and just ensure that everything, there's open line of communication. I think the day of the drilling, we should have the plumbing engineer on hand via phone and just be aware and kind of a live communication as that happens. So yeah, absolutely. I'll coordinate with them, and then if you could let me know as soon as you know what day that's going to be, and
Yes.
I'll coordinate with them. That's a great point. Thanks.
Okay, Stephen.
So would the plumbing engineer be providing a, say, gallons per minute yield that would be desired from the well?
Yes, I actually found the email. I've forwarded, this was already a previous email chain. They're looking for 25 gallons per minute at 35 PSI. But again, that is, I think, optimal. No, I'm not sure on the specifics. I think that's optimal. If they can't achieve that, that doesn't mean that that's a no-go. The plumbing engineer then designs around lower flow rates. So we had already asked the plumbing engineer what would they like as a peak flow. And I think that's maximum. So that's not to say a minimum. They didn't provide a minimum. So yeah, obviously a lot more than a single gallon a minute.
Right.
So I don't want to alarm you. This was just peak flows that we got from the plumbing engineer. So
I mean, from my experience, 4 gallons per minute would be a good minimum well. And if you have 6 to 8, that's considered to be a pretty good well. Or, gallons per minute. So 25 sounds like a nice wish.
Yes. And I think at that point, I think at that point also the fire suppression system was in question.
And maybe we were even talking, the irrigation had been proposed. And
that's right.
Right.
That's right. So it was all encompassing. So I want to get updates on that. But again, to say that we did not, my understanding from the plumbing engineer was that, not meeting that 25 gallons per minute was not a concern for this project. It just then decides and helps the plumbing engineer design their system. And we may need to provide a storage tank if it's very low, as you guys have already mentioned. So Neil, and to the group, I'll keep you guys updated as soon as I find out more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dominic.
Okay, moving along. Reviewing the results of the Concom meeting on our NOI. Mary Ann, do you want to?
Sure. So we've had the Conservation Commission closed the public hearing for the NOI last Thursday. And it was I thought it was a very good meeting. The commissioners asked some questions, and April Dorosky, our wetland scientist from Fuss O'Neill, and Amy Bell, the civil engineer who designed the stormwater management system, answered the questions. And there were some questions from the public. There were questions from a woman who I don't know, but she clearly has some experience with this. And
she works for Amherst.
She works for so she works for the town of Amherst. And she clearly had some experience with stormwater management, and it really seemed like she and Amy Bell had a nice conversation, and yeah, you know, and they understood each other, and that's the important thing. And so it really felt, and then they asked a lot of questions about our mitigation measures, and our mitigation measures aren't, you know, we're disturbing this 6 feet of buffer zone, so we're gonna do something in this 6 feet of buffer zone. They're more sort of broad and widespread. We're going to, you know, we're gonna pick up trash and debris from the site, you know, just surface things that can be removed by hand, that we've all been looking, well, I've walked along that site a lot, and I've been looking at it and not touching it because somebody told me not to, and so we're gonna, you know, and that will clean up, you know, some of that is actually in the wetlands and in the buffer zone, and we'll just make it a nicer site and be better for the environment. And then we're going to do an inventory and come up with a plan for reducing, removing and reducing the amount of invasive species that are on the site. And then planting trees, and they seemed really reasonable, and that they thought that our proposal was reasonable. And I'm looking forward to seeing the order of conditions this week, this Thursday night.
Yes.
Penny, do you have anything to add? Penny has the most experience with the Conservation Commission, having formerly been.
Well, I would say it was a very productive meeting. The questions that were asked were all reasonable questions. Our consultants were able to answer all of them, and I think the commission showed, you know, like they're going to make a good faith effort to work with us on this. So it was rather heartening.
It was very nice to have the highway superintendent tree warden there, talking about the way he was going to back us up and be a part of this. So I think everybody felt, I think, pretty comfortable with it. And I was really pleased with the way the meeting went. And as with Mary Ann, I will be looking forward to Thursday night, seeing their final wrap up of this. But
yes.
very positive.
Andrea and Heather, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So if you could just remind me, or confirm that I have this right. So the Conservation Commission, so they have in their regulations, they have a regulation that trees have to be replaced according to a certain formula. So Elaine and Penny and I measured all of the trees we'll be cutting down, counted and measured the trees and flagged them. And then we have a plan for replacing them. And if the contractor is responsible for replacing those trees, they're $1,800 a piece. And if we replace the trees, so our highway superintendent is a highly trained landscape professional. He's worked for many years as a landscaper. And he's willing to plant the trees for us. When can we plant the trees on our own? Do we have to wait? Like, can we do that right away? Do we have to wait a certain amount of time?
So in terms of, for us, we don't cover any landscaping. So that's out
Okay.
of our purview completely, because that's
Okay.
an ineligible cost. So however you do your landscaping is up to you, but that's not something that our grant covers. So
So we could start doing the landscaping whenever, okay, all right,
Yes.
good,
Mhm.
okay.
Didn't, at the Concom meeting though, didn't they say something about how like we had to wait 366 days until?
Well, that was us, that was a misunderstanding that I had.
Oh, okay.
Yes, okay, so okay, that's good, all right, because, so the Concom's regulation, and we aren't gonna be able to do this, and we've already asked for a waiver. But the Concom's regulation is that all those trees are replaced within 180 days of the start of construction. But we're not gonna do the landscaping until the building is done, and the building's not gonna be done, in 180 days. So,
Right.
so we've already asked for a waiver, but that's good, because if we can do the landscaping on our own and not have the contractor planting those trees, we'll save a lot of money.
We can also get donated trees. People in town can make that as their donation as a
Right.
tree.
Right, but we still have to plant them,
Right.
and
Yes.
so we can do the planting ourselves, is what Andrea's telling.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Okay,
Excellent.
good.
Dale.
So the contractors have to warranty the building for a period of a year after construction. And I'm wondering if the 365 days might have come from that, in that, there is going to be landscaping done by professionals on the site. And if you start tampering with that, that's the only possible thing I can think of, that might get in the way. So we might need some clarification on that.
Right, but if we do all the landscaping, then it's not,
Right. Well, if we do it all, but,
right. Right, okay.
Great.
I think it's gonna be good. Good, okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion of that meeting? And I hope many of you will attend the meeting at 7 o'clock on Thursday night with the Concom, if you can. Okay, the next item was to review the meeting with the town employees and boards on the 8th. I thought that went quite well, although our police chief was not there. Did you get any further comments from her, Mary Ann?
No, but so what I said to Dominic was that I would invite her to come to our next design subcommittee meeting. So
Okay.
that, that way, because that's during the day. I mean, that other meeting was during the day, but that gives her another chance to come. I think it would be good if she could come, and Dominic could ask her questions. So, and that meeting is not this coming Wednesday, but the next one. So I'm going to ask her to come to that meeting at 12, right at 12 o'clock. Okay.
It's on the 21st?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And Dominic, for the full committee, could you please give us clarification on what our fire chief was saying about the solar panels on the roof?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I reached out to our code consultant to get confirmation about that. The fire chief raised a concern that with photovoltaic panels on the roof, you are restricted with the area of the roof that you use for photovoltaics panels in order to give the fire department access to the roof. So they need access to the ridge of a gabled roof during an emergency event. And the fire chief was holding on to 33% that I think it refers to residential housing. We got confirmation from our code consultant that if we have 36 inches clear from the roof ridge on either side, then we can go beyond the 33% area of the roof with our photovoltaic cells. So our solar consultant had already included that clearance in their layout in the DD drawings. So there is a slight disconnect. Everybody has the design development drawings. If you refer to the roof plans, there's an inconsistency that requires coordination, and we've already caught up on that. The PV consultant, the solar consultant already includes that 36-inch clearance with their layout. Our roof plan does not. So I'm just going to get the documentation, confirm it for the fire chief, and we should be all good. So there was also another aspect raised, and I think it was from zoning, the zoning board that was present, about a fire alarm.
Yes.
There was questions raised about what it would take to get a fire alarm. I got some comments back from our consultant about that, so I can forward that on to you. I don't have it right now, but it was actually priced out in our SD set for a fire alarm. I would expect that there's a little bit of escalation there, but at that time it was $17,000 for a fire alarm system. And a simple system, I can get you the details. I'll forward them to you. But around $17,000 at that point. So it could be kind of in the realm of 20 grand. So if you would like, we can hold that, we can bring that back in, that scope back in. It is not required for our building, for the occupancy size that we have and also the area of the building. We do not need a fire alarm system. We only need smoke detectors. But, you know, we can very well include a fire alarm system if you wish. So let us know and we can include it as an adult potentially.
Thank
You better describe what the fire alarm system is or would be.
Yeah.
Are we talking about as part of the smokes?
Yes, I believe so. Hang on. Let's see here.
I think that the key that the fire chief or I'm sorry, the gentleman that brought up the issue was concerned that if the building were to catch fire, even if there were local smoke alarms, if it did it in the middle of the night, you wouldn't know it. The building had burned to the ground and no one would know it unless you drove by and saw it. So I think the idea was for the cost of a modest fire alarm system that could be monitored by an outside agency, you'd provide a reasonable level of protection against complete loss of the structure in the event that whenever the spark or the ignition happened, if it was during an unoccupied period of time, the risk of a total loss might be mitigated somewhat.
So this is a monitored system as opposed to a pole station.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that I would offer is I don't think that the $20,000 is unreasonable for the system in terms of the project cost, but I would encourage the town to reach out to their underwriter and their insurance company and find out what the insurance savings is for a monitored fire alarm system in a timber building. I'll bet you'll see the payback will come sooner than you think it might.
Very good point.
Thank you. Dale.
So I think we could probably get the fire chief back here before the committee, and he would tell us that John Thompson mentioned the monitored fire alarm system. The fire chief is not advocating that or is not requiring that. He doesn't think that it's really necessary in this situation, you know, the way that this building's constructed. The other thing about those systems are, you know, you get a lot of false positives out of them. The other thing is, and then, you know, how does it fit in the scheme of all of the protection for the other buildings in town? You know, we have needier buildings that are not protected at all. So, you know, the same thing applies to all of our other buildings. What happens in the middle of the night? So, you know, so I mean, yeah, we can do it, but he's not advocating that we have a monitored system, and that's all.
No, the question didn't even come from Lenny. It came from John Thompson.
Right.
So,
Brad.
I'm going through similar issues with the town building I manage in the next town in New Salem, because our old unmonitored fire smoke alarm system died and we have to replace it. And my only real comment is the monitored systems comes with a cost. I don't remember what, maybe $1,000 a year in the service, the monitoring service that would be an annual thing that would be added to the library budget.
Things like that, actually don't, so that would be considered a utility and there's a town utility budget. The library has an alarm system now that's paid out of a town utility budget, the current library. So Dominic, do you, so I think for $20,000 and a nominal annual fee, it makes sense to have a fire alarm system. And do you need a motion from the committee, or can you just sort of put that in as an adult and then we make a decision?
I think we took it out because
Right.
we didn't require it
Right.
by code.
Yes.
So that wasn't, it was never on our VE list.
Right.
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 Neil, you might better advise on my direction here. I'm happy to put it back in, and I don't think OEA needs a motion to do so. It's kind of a building request.
Yeah, no,
Like
I
a
think
performance
it's,
request to a building that I don't know needs a formal.
yeah, no, I think if it's the committee's wish,
Yep.
they should just be able to authorize you to do it, put it back
That's
in the
right.
design and we'll go.
Yep.
Is there a cost from Bala to do it?
No. Not as I understand it. I didn't get that from my communication this week about it. Yeah, so we can just include it. I don't need a motion for that. No.
Okay.
Yep.
And it may so it was the first SD that it was $17,000, and that was also a larger building. So anyway, it might be 19,750 and not
Right. It could be marginally
Yeah.
more expensive. Right.
And we're not gonna do it as an ad alternate, correct?
Do you want to just put it in, Jeff? Do you think it's a good idea to just put it in?
I don't think it's big enough item to do as an ad alternate. We're gonna have other
Okay.
alternates that are more important.
Okay.
Andrea?
So I have a question that goes back to the landscaping part. So when we're ready to just, if we can go back to that for a second after you finish this discussion.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else to say about this? Marianne and Dominic, are you clear where we are with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Great.
right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Andrea.
Thank you. So in the recesses of my mind, while we've been talking about all of this, I'm recalling an LSTA grant where our grant specialist at the MBLC had asked me what happens if someone is doing volunteer landscaping for an outdoor programming area, sort of. And I recall us having a conversation potentially with someone at the Department of Labor, and I'm going to kind of lean on you, Neil, here for the, whether or not the person who is planning on helping you out is working under the auspices of the town at the time of doing it, or is doing it on a volunteer basis as a landscaper. I believe that might change. That might
Is this
change
about
something for
prevailing
you.
wage?
Prevailing wage,
'Cause
and
I remember seeing
yes,
some of this very recently.
yes. So Neil, do you know any more, or do you, Marianne? You might know too.
Well, so the highway superintendent and the tree warden would be, so if he was doing any planting, that would be part of his job, right?
Okay.
And then,
Okay.
and then we, the Shutesbury Garden Club and the Shutesbury the Friends of the Library and the Shutesbury Library Boosters, we'll call ourselves, would be volunteers doing the other kinds of planting, right?
Okay.
And I know that some of that is okay, because Lauren told me that Mark and Warwick did extensive wetlands mitigation and that they did it with volunteers.
In Warwick or in
No,
Monterey?
in Monterey.
Monterey.
Monterey and Warwick, totally
Okay.
different. Good, that
Okay.
was a good catch.
Yes.
I totally meant Monterey. So they did a lot of wetland mitigation using volunteers doing the planting and
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
So and I think our conversation about this happened maybe after Mark had done his project.
Okay.
So I just wanted to bring it up in case, and Neil, you might know more about this.
So I'm gonna offer that there's a difference between a garden club planting a defined small area outside of a public building as opposed to a garden club landscaping 4 acres
Mhm.
outside of a public building, right? Big difference. Liability, insurance, prevailing wage, all kinds of flags in the air as you drive up the driveway and you see all this going on. So I would tell the town to use discretion. The laws are in place to protect the laborers and to protect the mechanics that are doing the work. And I don't think that it's right to, I don't want to say put your nose up or thumb up at the requirements, but I think you got to use some discretion. And if it doesn't feel right and you're asking yourself, geez, this doesn't feel right, it's probably a good indication that it's not right and we should go in a different direction.
Okay, Brad?
I think it would be important to have a clear delineation between what any contractor does and what any volunteer does, that they need to be very separate. In my, again, talking about the meeting house I manage in New Salem, we've been talking similar questions of Davis-Bacon, of prevailing wage, and I don't have the answers. I just feel like whenever I bring the question up, the answers are murky. I agree with what Neil said. He put it very well. So thank you.
I think the other thing I should mention is I do want to differentiate if the town performs the work themselves, meaning it's DPW workers that are out on the site and they're the people that are installing the trees, you're fine. They can do the entire site. They can do the grass, the plantings, and everything in between. But if you're bringing volunteers onto the site, God forbid they're working next to a town backhoe and something happens with the backhoe and they get hurt, that turns into a huge insurance liability for the town. And it won't be worth the money you saved on the trees, I promise. And I don't mean to be a naysayer, but
Mhm.
the road to the bank is paved with good intentions.
Okay, but I
Sorry.
get it. I get what Neil's saying, and I think that our highway department can plant the trees, and
Hmm.
they can do that without I mean, they're way better equipped to plant big full-size trees than I am, for sure. And that will save us, it's not gonna cost us $1,800 a tree to have the highway department plant the trees. And then, another thing we're planting is 6 or 8 flats of herbaceous plants in the wetland meadow. That's something that could be done by a group of skilled volunteers. And Penny is a master gardener, she mentioned the other day. And my husband has a degree in horticulture and has worked as a landscaper. And so they can be out there planting those. I mean, that's just a trowel and putting the plant in the ground, right? And those two things don't have to happen at the same time. So we don't have to worry about Steve running over Penny and Chris with the backhoe. So okay, good. I think we have some flexibility and just some careful planning.
Mhm.
And we can make the landscaping portion of the project more affordable for us.
Definitely.
Okay.
Dale, you've had your hand up for a while.
So, as a former builder who's been responsible for this sort of thing and passing buildings off to owners, I think, we are going to have to decide how much of the site work is going to be done by the professionals and how much of it is going to be part of the bid process, which is going to have to satisfy, a certain amount. It won't be the complete thing, but it'll be at a point where the contractor can walk away from it. And then at that point, after that, we can bring the highway department in to do the planting and all of that. But I don't think we can rely on the highway department to do the finished grading. I mean, we've got driveways, sidewalks, all of that. So, let's not fool ourselves. We have to all of that's got to be part of the bid process. Okay.
Right.
And really the finished grading is going to have to be part of the bid process too. And then we can take it from there. But I just want to, let us think about this a little bit here.
Sure. I agree with you there.
Can I add to that? That's a great point, Dale. I would recommend that the grasses are definitely a part of the project. Erosion, site erosion, silt socks, all that's the site will have to be in a functional state for stormwater to work properly. So that's a good point. I think plantings could be done by DPW, and then all the grasses need to be there and established for the site to work properly.
Dominic, I agree with you on that. I think it will be important to have a conversation, I don't know when exactly, later in the process about these very things, because I've also felt like the grading and the grass and perhaps even a small number of significant trees that are very close to the building, it might be worth having the contractor put in.
I agree.
It sort of has to work that way, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think I think there are many skilled and eager volunteers, but I agree we need to carefully sort out who does what and make sure it's a good, safe, reasonable plan.
Right. Okay, this discussion will continue. So excuse me. Next steps we have. Where are we? We're going towards the well and having that. Dominic, you have the drawings out. Is that true? Where are we with this?
With the project in whole through CDs. So the big thing we're working on right now, we've engaged the plumbing inspector. So we're looking to hear back from them this week. I had a phone conversation with them last week, and it was a good conversation. And Mr. Letourneau sounded reasonable, but he was not willing to make a decision over the phone, of course. So I submitted a formal request for leniency to meet the restroom plumbing code. So he's had that. He said he would get back to me this week, so I'll give you an update on that. That's a critical item. Coordination continues with all consultants. So that is moving along. Obviously, Conservation Commission, once we get that locked in as far as how things pan out, with the NOI is critical at this point. At this point, off the top of my head, there isn't any critical decision making that I need from the committee. We are working to develop details. Everything's full steam ahead. It's really the plumbing code that we need resolution on, and yeah, not much new to update the committee on as it stands today. Yeah.
Dominic, are we planning to do another cost estimate? And if so, when would it be completed?
Yeah, that's mid-March. That will be the 15th is when we're submitting for a cost estimate. So we're doing a 75% cost estimate on the 15th, and I would expect 2 weeks for our cost estimator to perform that, and then we'll circulate to everybody, obviously, then.
Will the decision about the bathrooms influence that date at all?
I don't have an answer for that. I would hope not. So I hope not. I'm hoping that we get an answer this week, and then we can very quickly ramp up one way or another with our engineers. So it really, obviously it's a space planning problem for us if it goes one way, and it's going to be a critical one and a challenging one. So we need to hear from the plumbing inspector before we can really dig into this, I think.
Right. Marianne, you had something?
No, that's okay.
Jeff?
Hey, Neil, who does the contractual boilerplate for the documents? The town attorney? Or you guys, or is something I want to make sure you're staying on our radar?
Normally we will accept Division 1 documents from the town for incorporation into the contract. If the town doesn't have anything, we could ask Dominic and his team to make a suggestion and have town council review it. We've done it that way in the past as well. Dominic, how do you guys usually handle your front end?
Yeah, we usually request it from you guys. So, it can come from the town or OPM. Obviously, the two of you coordinate. So, in my experience on past projects, it's come from you. We do have front end specs for other projects. So I'll talk to Matt about whether we can share something to you if that's what you would like, and then you can go through it and edit it.
So Marianne, I think maybe you need to have a discussion with Becky.
I'm texting her as we speak. Okay.
Because we've seen some of the front end boilerplate that the town uses for like the roofing project at the school. So they do exist. Probably ought to get a copy of that stuff and pass it on to Neil and the designers. And just make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot in certain locations.
Okay.
Another question is, and it's a follow-up to the cost estimate. In order for us to get our MBE, WBE requirements incorporated into the front end, we're supposed to provide the State Diversity Office with a CSI breakdown of the cost, the 60% CD cost estimate for them to evaluate. I don't honestly understand what they do with the information and why a DD estimate wouldn't be sufficient. But I'm just offering it that that's something that we've been asked to provide, and obviously we can't provide it until we get it from Pete, who I assume is doing the cost estimate. But the sooner that information can be provided, the better. SDO, I think, does the best they can, but they're not exactly lightning fast operation. So I'll stop. The way that we used to do it is it was a standard, 8% and 4.5% MBE WBE requirements. Then they changed the law that said you could do 11.5% combined.
Yeah,
And now you submit the cost information to the SDO office and they dictate to you what the rates are based on regional availability and whatnot in their database. So they've completely taken it out of our hands. And now we have to wait for that information to come from them. And obviously, coming from the general contracting background, that's not something you can drop on them 48 hours before bid and say, we're holding a bid date. So it would be good to get that information sooner rather than later.
And all the information about that should have been included in your last contract package that you received from us, because they have us submit the requirements with that contract.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else that anyone has to bring up? Were there any committee liaison reports? I see none and hear none. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Antonella's aye.
Delmas, aye.
Foster, I.
Cool,
Penny,
Sorry, Jake's eye.
Moss, I.
Quackenbush, aye.
Vallejo, aye. Our meeting adjourned at 8:09 PM. Thank you all very much.
Do we
And
have another meeting?
We do not have another meeting scheduled. Let us assume that it's in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Go on.
Bye.
Everyone.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.